Welcome back everyone to another episode here on Keep Running with BK, and I'm excited to have you join me for today's video. And if you've been following along on the channel, you know I've spent the last 7 or 8 videos talking about my preparations for an ultra marathon, and in my last video I shared how that went. And now with that behind me, it's time to talk about what's next. So I've got some notes here, some thoughts and things I've been thinking about this past week that I want to share with you right after this. Welcome back everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to Keep Running with BK. And in my last video I shared with you some thoughts and reflections on my recent ultra marathon did not finish, my DNF. Only the second race in nearly 40 years of racing did I not finish, and both of them were in August. So lesson learned, no more races, certainly not long ones, in the month of August. And today is, at the time of this recording, the last day of August, which means we are moving into September, and with that, my favorite season of the year, fall, is upon us, or at least approaching. Hopefully things will begin cooling off. We've had some rain here the past couple of days. Tomorrow is supposed to be a lower humidity day. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to cooler temperatures and getting back to more comfortable running with. So with that said, I want in this video to just do a real quick recap on some of the things that I've learned and how I am doing about the ultra marathon that occurred last week, and let you know how my recovery is going. In general, the recovery is going very well. The plan was to do my taper, my 2-week taper that I talked about in an earlier video, in reverse, with some modified long runs. And so essentially last week I walked on Monday, a mere reflection of walking on the Friday before the race, and then Tuesday through Friday I ran a easy 5K just to shake out any kind of residual stiffness, lactic acid, other aches and pains that might have been there. And quite honestly, I really didn't have a whole lot. I did sense a little bit of things going on with my feet, and everything else for the most part felt good. That was a bit surprising. I was really actually expecting to feel a little bit more. And then on Saturday, rather than running a half marathon long run, I only ran a 10K easy long run. And during that run, I definitely noticed that, yeah, I'm not fully recovered. Even though on the shorter stuff and the easy stuff, I was feeling good, I could definitely tell I was a little bit more winded. There was a little bit of tiredness hiding there in the legs as I got into about that 5-6 mile area. And then this week, my second week of reverse taper, if you will, I kind of really am just returning back to my normal running, and I'll adjust the long run. So I did 5 miles over some gentle rolling hills. Definitely could tell that I'm not fully recovered, breathing a little bit heavier, working a little bit hard. I also had a lot of things going on, a lot of things in my heart, a lot of things in my mind that I'm thinking about and dealing with outside of running, that I could see reflected in the heart rate, which was way higher than it should have been for the pace that I was running and the easy thing. But I was definitely wrestling mentally and dealing with a lot of stress midday. One of the things I wanted to share about the ultra marathon is that there were 89 people who started the race. Of those 89, I was one of the 19 people, so roughly 1 in 5 people did not finish the race due to the heat, the humidity, and the brutal conditions. An additional 38 people finished in 7 to 10 hours. So my goal was to finish under 7 hours. Somewhere between 6 and 7 would have been the range that I was expecting. More around 6.5 was where I thought my training would have gotten me had I been able to finish. That's more than half of the participants did not finish or finished later than where I was targeting. So kind of gives you an idea and an indication as to how brutal the conditions were on a relatively flat course and how that went. I was supposed to perform my monthly MAF test yesterday morning. However, I was woken a little bit earlier than the alarm clock to thunder and lightning and heavy rains. And I did contemplate still doing it, but with the lightning and thundering continuing, I just opted to run at lunch and revisit that this morning, which I did. Give you a quick update there on my August 2021 MAF test. I ran for an hour at my target MAF heart rate, and I ran 6.3233 miles, somewhere around there, which is about a quarter mile shorter than the same test last month at the end of July. Now, at first blush, you might think, okay, well, you're going backwards. That is a bummer. Something's maybe off. Well, there is something off. I attempted to run an ultra marathon, fighting the heat and humidity for 6.5 hours just 1 week ago prior to the test. And it just indicates that, one, my fitness is actually pretty good. I actually expected it would be a lot worse than that. So the sheer fact I was able to eke out a 6.3 miles in an hour at that target heart rate, given the heat, the humidity, the recovery from the race last week, I take as a victory and a testament to my fitness level. But I also thought, I've been doing these MAF tests now on a monthly basis for more than a year. So I went back to last August. So exactly 1 year later, I actually ran a half a mile further at the same target heart rate for the same duration, same everything. And so, improving by half a mile in this type of weather conditions over the course of a year is encouraging and indicates that the MAF training does work. It is working for me, and my aerobic fitness is continuing to improve. Some other quick updates with this morning's run. I actually surpassed the 1,200 miles for the year, which was my goal for the year. I knew going in there was a very good chance, based on how my training has been progressing and what my goals were, to increase my weekly mileage and try to build that strength and endurance for the longer distances through increased training volume, that I would surpass that. But it's a goal nonetheless that I set at the beginning of the year that I've met, which is encouraging. Speaking of goals, one of my other goals for the year was running the Cleveland Marathon this past spring. And I did a bunch of videos on my training and preparations for that. I talked about my training plan for that. Well, due to COVID, it got postponed to this fall. And so in the back of my mind, one of the things that I was thinking of is perhaps after the ultra marathon, which was one of my goals for the year, that perhaps I would train for the Cleveland Marathon this fall. And at this point in time, I'm really leaning away from that. I really thought maybe all this training would be good just to jump into a road marathon, give that a go, see what I can get. And but I think what I'm thinking about doing instead is this. Earlier this year, I did an 80-20 training block, and this fall I really want to return to the 80-20 training method. I really want to share more about how that training goes. I've been reading the book this summer, so I'll be sharing more about what I'm learning from the book and really dig in there. And what I've decided to do is really train to run a fast half marathon. Now, whether that turns out to be another time trial similar to what I did back in April, or whether I find a half marathon race to sign up for and go that route, that is what I'm thinking. So generally what that involves is 80% of my training will continue to follow the principles of the Maffetone training method, which I've talked about quite extensively on the channel. where it's going to be an easy effort. I will be using my target MAF heart rate, and I will keep 80% of my training volume at or below that heart rate. And when you're following the Maffetone training method, you're really utilizing a heart rate monitor, which is a great mechanism or tool to help you to really control the effort. And when you're doing MAF training, heart rate is essential because it's really giving you feedback so that you know to hold back, to pull back, to ease up, so you can stay under that to achieve the goals of those training principles of easy running. Now, as I revisit the 80-20, 20% of my training volume is going to be targeted with harder training efforts, and I'm going to wear a heart rate monitor to monitor that and to get the feedback and just kind of see how that goes. But I'm not looking to control the effort so much as I'm looking to push myself, to test myself. It will be in an educated manner, but I'm going to be using pace as the primary mechanism that's going to drive the training effort. I'm pushing myself to maintain or hold or maybe even slightly surpass the target pace for that particular effort. And what I use to do that is I have long been a fan of Jack Daniel's Running Formula book, which has a lot of great information. It's probably my all-around favorite book on running that I've ever read. I tend to be a technical, analytical individual, and so I tend to be drawn to those books as my favorites. But one of the things I like about his book is he has the V-dot tables in there, and I'll talk about that perhaps more in a future video. But essentially what you do is you perform a race type effort or a hard effort at a given distance, and you look that up in a table, and it gives you a V-dot score, which is a number that you can then look up in other tables, and then it will give you equivalent paces that you want to target your run when you do different types of speed work. So if you're doing repeats, you're doing 200s or quarter mile repeats, it gives you a target pace that you should be running those at. If you're running intervals, and say you're doing 400 or 800 intervals or mile intervals, it gives you kind of a target pace that you should be running those. And it gives you these target paces at various distances for different types of running that you're doing, which will be the primary driver for the speed work that I'm going to do in preparation for this half marathon. So you can expect in upcoming videos that I'll be talking about how that goes. In next week's video, what I'm going to do is talk about, there's a Strava segment that I test myself on here that's fairly close, and it's on one of my typical training routes. I'm going to attempt to run that hard this upcoming week. I will take the mile pace from that hard run to determine my current fitness level or my current V-dot score in Jack Daniel's book, and then I'll share with you some of the target paces that I'll be using for some of my speed work and what that will look like. So I'll provide some more details around that as I make the shift from 100% MAF easy running to 80-20, more of the 80-20 principles that I've mentioned. So back in April, I ran a half marathon time trial. I'll put a link to that video in the upper corner here if you're interested in going and checking that out and then seeing my thoughts and feedback on that. But I went back and I rewatched it and kind of revisited that, and I couldn't help but when I was watching that video feeling like, man, I just looked pretty slow there. And granted, I hadn't run a half marathon hard for 8 years prior to that. So it was the first time doing that. I was very happy with the results at the time. I still am. I'm not questioning them. But I ran a 1:43:43 half marathon, which is 7:55 pace. And as I reflected on that, I kind of made mention, And in fact, let's take a look at that video right now. I feel I can at least get back to where I was running 8 to 7 years ago. So I think I can, you know, drop another 20-30 seconds per mile average on this, say, a year from now. Probably when I attempt something like this again. So as you saw in that video clip, I made mention that I feel like I could improve upon that by 20 to 30 seconds per mile, say a year out or whenever I attempt to do that. So that's going to be kind of my set goal for now. I'm going to attempt to run roughly 25 seconds per mile faster, which is roughly a 7:30 pace for the half marathon, and we'll roughly say in the October time frame. So that's what we're going to train. We're going to train for September and October, and as the training unfolds, I'll choose a date in October to shoot for another half marathon with the goal of running 7:30 pace and seeing if I can improve upon that particular time. So again, I just want to thank all of you for checking out the channel. If you're new here, consider becoming a subscriber, and I really encourage you guys, you know, share your thoughts in the comments below. What are your goals for this fall? Are you continuing to work on the same thing, or as you're coming out of the summer months into the fall, or if you live in the southern hemisphere and you're coming out of, what is it, winter and entering into your spring, are your goals for the upcoming months changing? And if so, what are some of your goals? I'd love to read about it in the comments below. I'd love to kind of follow along with your progress and share training commentary with each other. And I think that just really helps to foster community, really supporting and encouraging one another. And as always, I'd really appreciate if you'd enjoyed this video or got anything out of it, you click the like button, and feel free to check me out on Twitter or follow me on Strava. I'll provide links to those in the show notes below. And as always, until next time, stay safe, train smart, and keep running.